Hey, so you remember that San Andreas VR port that got announced during a Meta presentation almost 4 years ago, and then was mysteriously delayed indefinitely according to a comment made by Meta Quest's official YouTube account on one of their own videos?
What?
Yeah, I know, weird way to announce a game getting shadow canned. But thankfully, modders as usual will take things into their own hands to make things a reality. And now, San Andreas is fully playable in VR thanks to both the UEVR mod by PrayDog and a plugin for it made by HolyDH. The UEVR mod by PrayDog has been making playing any modern Unreal Engine based game compatible with VR since its release. And when the definitive edition launched for the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, there was some leftover code in the game labeled GTA.VR that could be enabled by a custom INI file showing that VR was at least tested within this version. But by implementing PrayDog's UEVR plugin, the dev HolyDH over on Nexus, with the help of a few other devs, was able to make a compatible way of playing San Andreas in VR with full motion controls, and still be able to utilize the full suite of gameplay options that San Andreas provides.
Slurp my burger, sir!
Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see your full body as CJ in VR, unless you run into a bug like I did. But you're still going to be able to see CJ's feet, so you can still get an idea of where you're facing while running around and aiming within the sunny state of San Andreas.
Motherfucking failure!
And it honestly plays really well, from cutscenes to driving and shooting. All of it feels really good, and how you would expect the game to still play, just within this new perspective. Granted though, my controllers for my headset have definitely seen better days, as both of my thumbsticks have insane stick drift, which means I can't really make a left turn half the time.
Come on, boys. We about to get through this shit. If my fucking controller lets me turn!
But controlling CJ, climbing walls and buildings, and just interacting with the world works just like you'd expect from the base game. And once you pick up a weapon and pull one out, you'll be able to see that weapon model in your hands and move it around, and freely aim whenever you're shooting, as long as you're facing forward. And I know I've talked shit on Definitive Edition in the past, but seeing the world and these models up close in VR gives me a newfound appreciation for the updated art style that was introduced within these remasters, especially now since the game's been updated and most of the textures all over look a lot better than they did before. And with the new lighting changes, I'm not gonna lie, there are some times while I was playing this for the video that I was genuinely impressed by the visuals on display. Like especially with these weapon models that are impressive to see up close, that even have iron sights on the weapon models, which I was not expecting at all. And seeing those iron sights made me think that they possibly had first person planned at some point for these remasters, or they just planned way in advance for the official VR port. However, driving vehicles works just as it did in the base game too, meaning you unfortunately won't be moving your hands like you're turning a steering wheel.
Whoa!
Which is a huge missed opportunity, but I could see that getting implemented over time. But I'd love to see that added interactivity in the future if the dev still plans on adding to this. I will say though, it definitely takes some getting used to with the controls and how they worked with the original game, like with bikes, flying aircrafts, or simply just pulling off drive-bys. Like you can't just point and shoot from a car like you'd expect to in VR, but instead you still have to point left or right while in a car, or while you're on a bike, shoot from the front or to the sides. And like I mentioned earlier, you're not going to be able to see CJ's body, so it is hard to tell which way you're facing while in a tough situation. But just look down at your feet and see where CJ is facing, so that way you can have a better time aiming or even hitting your opponents. And another thing that is unfortunate is that you can't manually swing melee weapons like in other VR titles, meaning you do have to hit using a trigger press like in the original game. Hopefully we do see an update in the future where we can actually swing and hit with our melee weapons like in other VR ports, like most notably with all of the Half-Life VR mods and their crowbars. And I've also encountered a few other bugs that mostly have to do with getting back into a vehicle during a mission. Like sometimes most of the sounds in the game would completely cut off when getting back into a car after a cutscene until I exited and then re-entered the vehicle. Or sometimes I'd have CJ's head randomly show up on the roof of the car and the camera would then change back to how it normally was in the original game, which is a hilarious sight to see, but it did get in the way a couple times. And hell, there's even a scope feature for the sniper rifles in this game, which I wanted to add on real quick, which is awesome to see. And I was not expecting to see this implemented here, so kudos to the developer on adding this one. And it also works for the camera, although it does kind of lock it in place when you aim. But still, having the viewfinder on that thing made it look real in VR. And plus, seeing CJ's homies in the car up close, or just driving around at night, it all feels and looks incredible using this mod. But other than that, so far though, it feels incredibly fun to play, and this is a great way to experience San Andreas again, especially if you've ran through these streets a ton of times before.
Ah, you so calm.
Now, bear in mind, on the mod's official page over on Nexus, Holy DH did say that the story should be fully playable with this mod. And there's a big emphasis on the should, as some missions and their mechanics may end up breaking due to the nature of how the VR mod works with this old engine underneath Unreal. And sometimes this could be fixed by a simple pause and resume, or because of how the original mission's mechanics would work, the camera could break like it does for me during the Reuniting the Families mission, where once you get in the car to start firing back at the cops with Smoke's AK, the camera for me started spinning out of control, and there was like no way I could control where I was shooting, which ended up having me fail every time. And one last thing I wanted to add is that if you're a Steam VR user like myself, you're not going to be able to see the UI for any of the mini games or shops during the time of recording this, unless you switch to flat screen in the VR settings. And this seems to be an issue with Steam VR itself so far, so the dev recommends using Virtual Desktop or AirLink with OpenXR if possible. But if Steam VR is your only option, well, you can do like I did and just dance it out while staring at your screen with your headset slightly off. Gotta have some fun with these issues somehow. But Holy DH has already updated the mod a few times, fixing certain missions as they go along, and is looking for anyone willing to test the mod out as well on your side. So over time, this mod should work throughout the entire story without as many hiccups. And I'm sure that due to how certain missions work, the VR mechanics might cause issues as you progress throughout the story. But so far, it's mostly playable from what I've tried, and you can always grab some save files online like I did to help skip past certain missions. And I'll include a save pack down below with a link in the description if you do need to skip past certain missions yourself.
Do I have to?
Drive!
But overall though, thanks to the community, we can finally run around the streets of San Andreas through CJ's eyes in virtual reality. And so far, it's been extremely fun to play. Again, granted, there are some bugs which are to be expected from injecting virtual reality controls into a game from 2004, but so far from what's already available, it's an interesting look at what the official VR port could have been like. And hell, it might be our only option until Rockstar and Meta decide to take another crack at the official port. But until then, go to the links in my description if you want to check it out and give it a spin yourself. I wouldn't recommend it for a first-time playthrough of San Andreas if for whatever reason you still haven't played that game. But if you've been on these streets many times before and have access to a headset, then I highly recommend giving this a shot. Unfortunately, this doesn't work with the original PC port of the game, which is the better version overall, but if you do have the Steam version of the Definitive Edition, definitely check this out. And also, I can confirm personally that this does work if you acquire the game using other means.
Get right on it, sir.
Anyway, it's been a while since I've had a chance to cover any sort of VR content, so this was a nice surprise to see come up in my feed. So shout out to Beardo Benjo and the VR community for showcasing this one originally. And funnily enough, this mod dropped right as I was working on another VR mod related project, so stay tuned for that if you're interested to see what that mod is in the future. And if you like the video as well, please leave a like and also comment down below if you've tried this out yourself or you plan to in the future. Also, is anyone still interested in seeing the official VR port from Meta and Rockstar? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know down below. Alright, that is it from me, fam. I know this was a bit of a shorter one, but I mean, hey, it's a VR mod for an already pre-established title, so there's not a whole lot to cover with it so far. But still, it's damn fun from what I've played, and I highly recommend you check it out. I hope you all had a fantastic day, and if not, I hope you have a better one tomorrow, and I will see you all next time. BladeO out.
Dude, what? What? it.